Hey there, I'm Verity Songon and this is the Confident CEO podcast, the show that takes you behind the scenes of starting and running your small or not so small business. We will cut through the misinformation and bad advice about starting and running a business and give you actionable tips and advice that you can implement to grow, scale and achieve your business goals. Let's dive in. Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I am super excited as ever for this podcast, but the biggest reason why I'm so excited is that this coming Monday, so on Bank Holiday Monday if you're in the UK, Easter Monday, whatever you want to call it, the podcast turns a year old. I mean, how insane is that? I still can't believe that this show went for a few months, let alone like a whole year. We're going into our second year of the podcast, which I just think is the most insane. I don't know. I just think it's absolutely insane. I mean, I've been incredibly honest about my podcast journey to all of you guys in the sense that when I set up the podcast, yes, I had a strategy and a plan, but I wasn't sure how long the podcast was going to go for. I was very well aware of the stats of how quickly people give up on podcasts, and I wasn't 100% sure how it was going to fit into my business strategy, whether or not it was just going to be a bit of a side hobby. Yet here we are, as I said, coming up on the 10th of April with a year of the podcast. I don't know, absolutely amazed. But it's not about me, it's about you guys, because you are the people who are turning up every single week to listen to these episodes, which I'm just so grateful for. And I know that people are turning up every single week because when I look at the download stats, normally by the time I look, because I look at my stats on different times, I normally look within the first 24 hours, the first 7 days, and then within the first 30 days of an episode being published, because I like to be able to look at those analytics for a whole variety of reasons. But I think that's a whole separate podcast episode looking at analytics and why you look at them. But what I do like to do is look within the first 24 hours. And with the first 24 hours, I know that there are people who are listening to the episodes literally as soon as they drop, which is just so humbling and so amazing. And I can only thank everybody for their support, because without you guys there would be a podcast, but I would just be kind of talking to myself in an empty room, which would be a bit, I don't know. But yeah, just so thank you so much. I'm just really thrilled and really humbled that you guys turn up every week, and I think it's absolutely amazing. So whether or not this is the first episode of the Confident CEO podcast that you've listened to, or you have been with us right from the beginning, I appreciate you here. And to show my appreciation, I am launching on the 10th of April, I'm launching a 5-day challenge, an email 5-day challenge. It's completely free. You can sign up at any point. So if if you forget to sign up on the 10th, that's not a problem. You can sign up literally any time. You go to veritysongon.com/5-day challenge, and that's 5 as a number, not the word. So veritysongon.com/5-day challenge, and you can sign up for my free email challenge to grow your podcast audience. Every single day for 5 days, you are going to have an email come to your inbox where you are going to have an action point of something to do that day. And not just for that day, but to carry on doing, but you start it that day and carry on doing that action in order to increase your podcast audience. And these aren't just random things that I've gone onto Google and grabbed. These are all strategies that I have used to grow the Confident CEO podcast listenership, get it to being a year old, getting it to hit all of those different charting ranks that we've had the luxury of featuring in on Apple Podcast charts in particular. So yes, I would love you to come along for the ride, for that challenge. It's starting on the 10th of April. It's going to be so much fun. I'm going to be implementing everything at the same time, so we can literally go through this challenge together. And yeah, I'm really excited. So go to the show notes for the link, but it's veritysongon.com/5-day challenge. And as I said, if you are listening to this as the recording comes out, you can join us live. Also join me on Instagram, because I'm going to be doing a lot that week around the challenge. And if you're listening to this in the future, then that link is still live and you can join at any time with the challenge. But what I want to do for the main bulk of this episode is actually talk about podcasting and how beneficial podcasting is for your business and how it can really be transformative for your business. Now, I don't want to be really crazy and over the top and be like, podcasting changed my life, but podcasting did literally change my life because, you know, just over a year ago, before I started the podcast, I was not in the world of podcasting. I didn't have a podcast. I wasn't offering podcasting services. I wasn't teaching female entrepreneurs how to launch their podcast. I wasn't managing anybody's podcast. This has literally been such a career change for me and such a life direction change as well, which is so, so amazing to think that a medium that when I was in school, I don't want to say it didn't exist because podcasting totally did exist when I was at school, but it wasn't as part of like Apple Podcasts. You'd go onto iTunes and then there was like that little button that said podcasts and everyone was like, what the hell's a podcast? And, you know, there were literally, it was hundreds of podcasts that were around as opposed to the millions that there are today. It was really, really small scale, and podcasting just wasn't really a thing when I was at school. And I have to be completely honest, I remember first hearing about podcasts. I can't even remember where. I think it was because this was like way before Facebook and all that kind of thing. So it wouldn't have been on social media. I think it was because somebody had like the the ability to listen to a podcast on like the first iPod that came out, because yes, I do remember the first iPod coming out, but I really can't remember. But regardless of, when I first heard about podcasting when I was a teenager, I honestly didn't think it would catch on. I thought it was going to be like one of those things like mini discs. If anyone remembers the era of mini discs, that was very short-lived. That did not catch on. And to be quite honest with you, I thought that podcasting was going to be the same. And then fast forward however many years, I now have a podcasting business, a podcasting agency, which is just absolutely insane. So it just goes to show that you really can't predict many things. But yeah, so I wanted to talk about why podcasting can be so beneficial for your business. And I want to dig a little bit deeper than the whole, it can grow your audience and you get a better audience connection, because those things are completely true. I don't want to poo-poo those, but I want to break them down a little bit more than the kind of superficial way that we see them bantered around on social media. So first of all, you get to grow your audience. Yeah, 100%, because people will find your podcast through SEO, through word of mouth. I have people find this podcast because you, my lovely audience, have been kind enough to tell people about the podcast. And I know that because I have people come to me and DM me and say, oh, I was told about your podcast, or so-and-so recommended your podcast, or somebody sent me the link for this episode and I'm so grateful because, you know, I really enjoyed it and I'm going to go tell somebody else about the podcast. So word of mouth has been huge for me growing this podcast. And I find it funny in an era of, you know, technology, and if you're anything like me, you know, you're just constantly thinking about the next Instagram post or the next scheduling post, you know, scheduling the next post and all those kind of things. And in a very internet era, I think sometimes we forget about the power of word of mouth marketing. And again, it kind of reminds me of back in the day. Did anyone get Smash Hits magazine, like in the 90s or early noughties? Like Smash Hits magazine, I remember they used to talk about like E-team. No, not E-teams, street teams. This was before E-teams. They used to talk about street teams, and bands used to have street teams. So you would like sign up to the band's membership or the band's fan club or whatever, and they would send you like leaflets or whatever, and then you would go round and you would put the leaflets promoting that band's new album or single and put them on cards, and you'd phone up the radio stations and be like, oh my god, so-and-so's just released this new track, please can you play it, and I'm going to request it. And then what you could do is you could then write to the fan club and say, I put out this amount of leaflets, or I requested the song this amount of times on this amount of radio shows, and they'd like send you prizes. Does anyone remember that, or am I just like really showing my age now? I don't know. But anyway, but word of mouth marketing, you know, it does work, and it's surprising how well it works as well. And I think sometimes, as I said, it's easy to get caught up on, oh, what should I post on LinkedIn? What should I post on my Facebook group? Whichever social media platform you're on. But actually just telling people sometimes about your podcast, or asking your audience to tell somebody that they think would like the episode that they've just listened to is so, so powerful and can really go a long way to helping build and grow your audience, which can then funnel into your business as well. And the other thing that I see get talked about a lot is about the audience connection. And I think sometimes that gets bandied around superficially and people are like, well, what do you mean you get an audience connection? Because it's audio, but don't I get an audience connection with my Instagram reel or with my TikTok video or whatever? And it's like, yeah, well, yes, you absolutely do. But, and again, this is kind of like a bit of an aside because obviously TikTok has now lengthened out the videos. You can put up 10-minute videos now. But even regardless of that, if you think about the length of a podcast episode, podcast episodes are typically between 20 and 40 minutes long. And that's because they suit really well for people who, you know, when they listen when they're driving, they listen when they're doing the washing up, the dishes, or whatever it is, going on a run. A lot of these activities typically take 20 to 40 minutes, which is why listening to a podcast episode whilst doing these activities is absolutely perfect for people. And yes, don't get me wrong, there are podcast episodes that last a lot longer, some that last a lot shorter. And regardless, I'm not, you know, saying what's right or wrong. I'm just giving you some statistics here and, you know, like generalizations. But if you think about those activities, when somebody's driving a car, when somebody is on a run or whatever, they have chosen to listen to your podcast episode for a good 20 to 30, 40 minutes, however long it takes. And normally when you're doing those activities, you're not scrolling onto the next podcast episode. You can't flick to the next video like you can on YouTube. You can't just keep scrolling until you find something else that you want to listen to because, you know, if you're driving, obviously that's illegal. But I know it's illegal in Britain to be on your phone when you're driving. I'm just going to go with the assumption that it's either illegal in other countries as well or a very heavy no-no. I wouldn't advocate it either way. But my point is, you know, if you're driving, you're not going to be scrolling for the next episode. If you're doing the dishes and the washing up, unless you're, you know, shouting through to Google Play or Alexa, you're not going to be necessarily skipping on to the next episode. You're kind of listening to what you're listening to, and that's really powerful to be able to connect with your audience for 20 to 30 minutes because so few other platforms give you that opportunity. Yes, you've got YouTube, but again, YouTube, you know, you're watching it, is so much easier to click off a YouTube video if you get a little bit bored or you're not too sure if you like the episode or whatever. And what I find with so many podcasts in particular that I listen to is how personal and how raw the podcast host gets in their shows. Now, don't get me wrong, again, that does not count for every single show out there. There are some shows which are incredibly scripted, absolutely fine. I'm not knocking any formats or any approach to a podcast here. But what I am saying is that there are a lot of podcasts that I listen to, in particular business ones, where the hosts get incredibly raw and incredibly honest. And what that's doing is just breaking down those and just any potential barrier. It's showing you as the podcast host as a human being at the end of the day. I mean, I listened to a podcast where the girl who hosts it is worth, I've honestly got no idea how much money, and like her business, again, I don't know how much money, but you can kind of start guesstimating when you see her fees, for example. But she is so normal in her podcast. You know, she doesn't come across as this like 7-figure business owner. She doesn't come across as any kind of stereotype to that role, I suppose I'm trying to say, but she is just so normal, and I love listening to her podcast because it is just so accessible, and it kind of makes me think, well, do you know what, in some ways I'm a lot like her. Yes, I don't have a 7-figure business, but her content is so accessible in the way that she talks. I feel like she's talking to me, and actually that's showing me that maybe having a 7-figure business is quite possible for me one day. So it's that kind of connection that we're really talking about in podcasting. Is breaking down those barriers. And I'm not saying that you need to tell everyone your nearest and deepest secrets. Obviously, it's your podcast. Have whatever filter on that you want. But, you know, you are able to expose yourself in different ways on a podcast, I feel, and really get to that nitty-gritty and rawness that you might not be able to either achieve or feel comfortable achieving on other platforms. And as I said, I think that's incredibly powerful. And the other reason why I think that podcasting is so imperative for business, and I am going to use the word imperative because I think it often gets overlooked as an awful lot of work, and it is an awful lot of work, but hey, that's where you get people like me who manage podcasts and launch podcasts for their clients to take away all of that stress so that all you need to do is hit record. But they work amazingly well as part of a marketing funnel, like amazingly well, because it's another opportunity to sell your services and products to your potential audience. And I don't mean sell as in like, turn your entire podcast into a giant infomercial or anything. No one would listen to that. That'd be awful. It's not home. Well, actually, do you know what? I say it's not a home shopping channel. I'm sure there are some podcasts out there that are like a home shopping channel and work amazingly well. And we know how addictive, if you're anything like me, how addictive watching home shopping channels are. And actually, that's a complete aside. I was watching a home shopping channel a few weeks ago because my daughter got me up at like stupid o'clock in the morning and there was nothing on telly and I could not be bothered to flick through Netflix or Disney or anything. So I just stuck on whatever channel it was and the home shopping channel was on. Do you know what? If you are stuck with how to sell your products, watch a home marketing channel home marketing show, because oh my God, those shows teach you. It's like 101 of marketing and selling because they sell those products and you go in thinking, oh, no one's going to buy that Hoover. And then within about 10 minutes, you're like, oh my God, how on earth is my life going without this Hoover in it? Or I watched one and they literally within about 20 minutes, my sleep deprived state, I was so convinced that I needed this particular pillow. I didn't go out and buy it, but it's not the point. Anyway, that's an aside about home shopping channels. But, it's going back to the point that you're not necessarily turning your entire episode into a whole plug, but you have got a prime opportunity to be selling to your ideal client and, just connecting with them where they're thinking, yeah, I would really like to work with Verity. I would really like to buy her course. I can see the value of her service, whatever it is. But you've got such a prime opportunity there. And I really can't stress that. I really can't stress that enough. And as I said, you never know, you might just find something that really resonates with you and you just really enjoy. You can kind of tell that I love talking and I love my random ramblings, and that is something that podcasting has just given me the opportunity to do, which I'm incredibly grateful for. And as I said, so many other business opportunities as well, but I feel like I've kind of got that point across now. So to wrap up the episode, if you do not already have a podcast as part of your business structure, I would love you to DM me on Instagram at VeritySongon, and I would, in a completely non-salesy way, I would love to just have a conversation with you as to how a podcast could really benefit your business and your marketing sales funnel. I would love that. So at VeritySongon, do reach out on Instagram. Let's have a chat about that. And if you are somebody who's already got a podcast and you're thinking, do you know what? I'm just absolutely swamped with dealing with the podcast, with managing the podcast. I don't know how to take it forward. Again, send me a DM. I would love to have a conversation with you and see how I can potentially help you take your podcast to the next level. And also, I will remind you, because as I said, on the 10th of April, 2023, we are celebrating 1 year of the Confident CEO podcast. And I would love you to go to veritysongon.com/5-day challenge. That's 5 as the number, not a word. So /5-day challenge. The link is in the show notes, and join us for our 5-day email challenge. We're going to be doing it live. I'm going to be doing it live with you, where every day during the week of the 10th of April, I will be sending you another tip, another action point for you to put in place that day and going forward to really grow your podcast audience. If you are listening after the 10th of April, I was going to say 10th of August then. If you're listening after the 10th of April, yes, you can join the challenge anytime at the same address. So until next time, have a great week, and I will, follow me on Instagram as well, because I need to figure out how I'm going to celebrate the 1 year anniversary on Bank Holiday Easter Monday. So you never know, you might see some cake in my stories or something. So make sure you're following to see that. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Confident CEO podcast. Before you go, I would absolutely be overjoyed if you could take just 2 minutes to leave me a review in Apple Podcasts. Reviews are a great way to tell Apple Podcasts how much you enjoyed the show, and it helps the algorithm to push out the podcast to more people, thereby helping us to help empower even more badass businesswomen to grow their inner CEO and grow to be the confident CEO of their business that they can be. I love to shout you out in your reviews as well, so you never know, you might be hearing your name on the podcast in the next episode. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.